Candidate Forum for Hennepin County Commissioner District 2. As a reminder, the rules and procedures for tonight's forum are in the program and were communicated to the candidates. We invited all candidates who filed for these offices to participate tonight. The candidates are seated in alphabetical order. The opening question will begin with the person who drew the number 1 spot earlier this evening and will rotate randomly after that. The opening question was sent to candidates prior to this evening by the League of Women Voters of Golden Valley, and candidates have 2 minutes to respond. That will be followed by written questions submitted by the audience, which candidates have 1.5 minutes to answer. And finally, there will be 1-minute closing statements. If you would like to submit a question, please raise your hand to request a question card or to turn one in to a league usher. We also accepted questions at the Golden Valley League's email. We will ask as many questions as time allows, consolidating by issue if necessary by league volunteers at the question sorting table. And all candidates will be given the opportunity to answer each question. The choice of questions will be made by me in good faith effort to reflect the interests expressed by this audience. Please remember that while respectful disagreement with a candidate's position is fine, personal attacks are not allowed. If your questions were not answered, please feel free to talk with candidates after the forum. And candidates, if at any point you need me to repeat a question, please just ask. Otherwise, to allow as many questions as possible, I'll read it once at the beginning of each round. In considering the candidates and their responses, we thought it would be helpful to hear a description of the office that they seek. Minnesota law defines the role and responsibilities of commissioners, which include serving as the county's key policymakers, overseeing the county's management and administration, representing county interests at the state and federal level, participating in long-range planning, and managing the county budget and finances. The 5 candidates are Tim Bildso, Irene Fernando, Natalie Johnson-Lee, Iyab Waldesmayate, and Blanc Yang. Please join me in welcoming these candidates. We have timekeepers so that each candidate has the same amount of time to respond to the questions. The timekeeper will hold up a card when there are 15 seconds left and a stop card when your time is up. We ask that you finish your sentence and stop at that point. The opening question is, why are you running for Hennepin County Commissioner and what are your qualifications? You will each have up to 2 minutes to respond, and the first candidate to speak is Iyab Waldesmayat.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm running county commissioner because as a first-generation immigrant, I have the opportunity to experience the American dream, which is truly I'm grateful and believe I have the responsibility to give back for the community. I believe in the power of government and the local government. That's what I'm running. A little bit about me. I came to Minnesota in 2002 from Ethiopia. Moved to Eagan, and I attended Eagan High School. From there, I went to Minnesota State University, Mankato, and I obtained my bachelor's degree for international relations and graduate degree in public administration. I currently work for the Veteran Benefit Administration, providing pension benefit for both veterans and their families. I think one of the things that really drive me to run for the commissioner is since the board established in 1852, no minority elected in the county. And that is very upsetting for many reasons. The primary reason happened because the structure of the board is unfavorable minority to win it. I would like to change it from 7 to 9. The reason is because both Anoka County and Ramsey County has significantly less population, but they both have 7 commissioners. Compared to Hennepin County, have 1.2 million people, and we still have 7 commissioners. So I believe we need to change it to 9. That's what I'm running for commissioner.
Thank you. Blong Yang.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Golden Valley for doing this. This is a unique opportunity to talk about Hennepin County. I also want to thank all of you here tonight and those of you watching on TV. I appreciate the fact that you are interested in Hennepin County and want to be informed before you cast your vote. My background includes being an elected Minneapolis City Council member, and before that, an attorney at legal aid and in private practice. I have a strong background in public service and a deep belief that government needs to work. That is the first job of a county commissioner, to deliver services effectively and efficiently, whether that's roads and bridges, health and human services, or libraries. Hennepin County has more than 20% of the state's population and more than 30% of all jobs, about 1 in 3 in the state, are located in this county. Our county's economy is the engine that moves this state forward. My personal experience contributes to my reason for running. I was born in a Thai refugee camp and came to the U.S. when I was 3. I'm the oldest son of poor Hmong refugees, and my family was a recipient of county services. Today, I'm proud to say that most of us no longer receive county services. Government systems are hard to understand for some people, and I've spent my professional career making sure all people have their voices heard and their needs met. I will bring experience and an ability to balance a budget in a government organization as county commissioner. I understand the importance of diversity in reducing disparities, priorities for our county. I listen to input, base my decisions on factual information, and communicate my reasons for my decisions. I am labor endorsed. I have the support of the firefighters, and I hope to have your support too. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Bildso.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for arranging and hosting this event, and the City of Golden Valley for allowing us to use the council chambers. I'd also like to thank the other candidates for serving and for going through this process. It's not easy, as you all know, but thank you for doing that. I'm biased, but I think District 2 is the best. It has the best cities and the best residents. The most frequently asked question that I get when I'm talking with residents is, what does the county do? Although the answer is simple, the scope of what the county does is so broad and complex. Hennepin County touches every resident and provides many of the basic services we expect and count on every day. That's why your vote in the primary on August 14th is so important. The 2nd District needs a commissioner who is experienced and prepared to serve on the first day. A person in the community, out in the community, listening to residents, able to navigate the complexities of local government and focused on getting things done. I bring 16 years of successful local government experience, having served on the Plymouth City Council, over 10 years of private sector experience in public finance, and currently as president of the North Loop Neighborhood Association, the experience of engaging residents and stakeholders to create a more livable community. My day job is I manage a team of insurance professionals for a national insurance broker. My priorities for Hennepin County include doing everything possible to help those suffering from mental illness and substance abuse. It destroys so many lives. I support the continued investment in the county's roads, bridges, and trails and transit systems. More frequent and efficient communication with residents is also needed. This means more time in the community and less time on the 24th floor of the Hennepin County Government Center. I'd advocate for the overhaul of the county's website to make more informative and interactive for residents. I also support Hennepin County's Level 1 Trauma Center and North Point Wellness in the North Point Wellness Center.
Thank you.
Okay.
Irene Fernando.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Irene Fernando, and I am proud to be the DFL endorsed candidate for Hennepin County Commissioner right here in District 2. I find myself really moved almost every day because we are at a pivotal crossroads in our society, locally, nationally, and I'm running for office because of this crossroads. I have spent my life lifting up unheard voices, and I'm running to advocate for those who are marginalized or structurally disenfranchised. I first came to Minnesota in 2003 to attend the University of Minnesota. I was just 17 years old and 10 days into my freshman year of college, where my friends and I co-founded a youth leadership nonprofit called Students Today, Leaders Forever. During my 11 years there, 22,000 students came through our programs with a promise to lead differently, with community at the center of conversations and decisions. And it is from that background that I am committed and I desire to take on this servant leadership role. We need leaders who will boldly advocate and fight for our needs while also humbly serving and listening and being with the community. I, from there, became a Bush Foundation Fellow. I've received really wonderful recognition in our community, from 40 Under 40 to the Social Entrepreneurship Cup. And I share that because I have a unique perspective and ability to advocate and advance some of our most complex issues. Everything that we're speaking about here is central and vital to our communities. And we need people who are willing to work across the board and across difference to advance these so that we are proud to pass on our communities to future generations. I am thrilled to be here. I've been running since September 22 of last year. We've earned the support of the AFL-CIO, the building trades, AFSCME, Council 5, dozens of community members, and I very much look forward to earning each of your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie Johnson-Lee.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thank you for all who have attended here today and all who are watching via social media and various forums. My name is Natalie Johnson-Lee. I am a former elected official with the City of Minneapolis, 5th Ward. I have a strong history of making a difference in the lives of Minnesotans. I'm excited about the opportunity to serve as the new Hennepin County Commissioner for District 2. While serving in Minneapolis, I championed a lot of things. One of the things that we did is we partnered, negotiated, and have approved responsible budgeting and good physical management of city resources. Initiated, many of you may have heard of the Step Up program. I initiated the framework for the Step Up program to make sure that youth had the opportunity to get employment opportunities and internships while in high school. I spearheaded the city to reconsider violence as a public health issue. I also advocated for more bike lanes and trails, which I use consistently. I championed the smoking ban for better health outcomes. And I also chartered the Rotary Club of North Minneapolis. And I'm going to speak to that one just really briefly. The Rotary Club of North Minneapolis was very important to me and a good friend of mine who happened to be the president of the Plymouth Rotary Club, because what we wanted to make sure people understood is that you must understand the value that is within your own community and rise up and begin to solve the problems and the challenges in your community. So it was a new and unique initiative for North Minneapolis, but we have one of the smallest clubs, but we also have one of the strongest clubs and the most impactful clubs in the Rotary clubs around the region. As a leader, we are charged to work together to accomplish great outcomes for our residents. I have, let me give you a little bit of history about who I am. I'm a 13-year-old, already? All right, I can keep going. I'm sure some of those things will be answered.
Goes fast.
Yes, it does go fast.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the questions from the audience. And a reminder, you'll have 1.5 minutes for each of these questions. And we'll come to you first, Natalie Johnson-Lee.
Okay.
What do you think the county should be doing to address the overdose deaths and opioid crises in our community?
So, first of all, the county has a huge role to play in the opioid epidemic. The interesting piece is when you think about opioids and you talk to other communities, it goes by different names. So in certain communities, it's heroin, and so what happens is when you talk about the opioid community, you've got to make sure that you can speak the language of that community so they understand what exactly you're talking about. As Hennepin County, what we need to do, one, is make sure that we have medical research and medical opportunities to be able to support those individuals that are suffering from that. But we also need to do preventative measures and educational matters. Many of our residents or what I found with young people is a lot of people, not just young people, but they don't understand that they have individuals in their families that are even have the addiction problem. So I think a lot of education needs to go into that process, as well as making sure that we allocate more funds for education, prevention, and solutions.
Tim Bildso.
Thank you. Great question, and it's one of my priorities around mental health, and it's something that needs to be dealt with. I think the first thing to do is acknowledge there is a problem, and that is being discussed, and people who are actively engaged in the county and the state around this issue. So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. The other thing is we really need to invest. The county needs to invest in services for those dealing with mental health. If you look at the county's capital improvement plan, which is the best place to determine what a county's priorities are, where they spend the money, you'll notice that there isn't a lot of money being spent around mental health. There could be a lot more being spent. So I think the next thing is identifying, and it's, the issue, the solution isn't going to come from the Hennepin County Board. The solution is going to come from empowering people to come up with ideas, real experts to make suggestions, and then fund those and support those suggestions that make sense. So, I think it's certainly resources. More resources need to be spent. Right now, looking at the capital improvement plan for Hennepin County in mental health, there's about $8 million spent for a multi-billion-dollar budget. So more resources need to be applied to this. Thank you.
Iya Boldasamayat.
To fight the health care crisis right now because of the overdose, we need to hold accountable provider, health care provider, doctors, they prescribed it. We need to hold all the doctor and the prescription and how much they're giving out to the patient. Second of all, we need to more counseling and health care services for these people. Right now, like Tim said, there's as much as a little money is spent from the county. That is not a priority for the county. I think we need to have more counselor or health care provider for the people affected by this. Another one is hold accountable for pharmaceutical companies, really. Either they have to pay fees or taxes. Minnesota needs to change the laws. I think it's just the county level, they can hold accountable a lot of hospitals and medical provider in the county. Another one is this probably more than the Hennepin County Commissioner, the state legislation need to change the laws and more accountable for pharmaceutical companies.
Belang Yang.
Thank you. With regards to this problem, let me just say that, I don't think any one of us disagrees on the issue of this being a really big problem. And when you look at what the stats are, basically, the percentage of deaths from opioids versus the percentage of deaths from auto accidents, we've come to the point where the deaths from opioids are much more per year. And the numbers are going to show that, in the next few years, our numbers are in the 200 deaths per year in our county alone. And so it's a big issue. And I think, one of the points that was made was that, Hennepin County is actually doing things. I think sometimes, when we sit up here, we talk about how the county is not doing anything. And we'll tell you, the county has started a task force using different folks within the county, from the Sheriff's Department to Health and Human Services to probation to the Public Defender's Office, to try to find a holistic solution from prevention to education to treatment. And I think, on the prevention side, with regards to staff at Hennepin County that are responsible for prescribing opioids, they're doing training so that staff is much more mindful of what they prescribe and are much more careful about what they can prescribe that is different. And, with education, the county is looking at doing that sort of work within different cultural communities to make it easier. And, lastly, the treatment part. We need to treat folks and really think about focusing just on treatment alone. Thank you.
Irene Fernando.
Yeah, so Similar to what individuals have said here, there's of course the ways in which we are responding with high quality care, the ways in which we are preventing this from happening via education, and of course the ways in which we are gathering the data so that we are being meaningful about our actions and our priorities. More uniquely than that, the county has an opportunity to look at where this issue intersects with other county services. When people are suffering from addiction and are also in, having mental health crises, or they are suffering from situations that are producing eviction or homelessness, or they're in times where they are perhaps being criminalized in a way that is not as just as it could be. Those are those are places where the county can very uniquely add a different lens, because we are providing services across the board for many residents for many different reasons. And beyond that, we need to get to root cause. What are the reasons that these drugs are making out onto the streets? What are the reasons that people are medicating themselves? And how can we think more holistically about each individual and the story and narrative that they may hold? And how can we think more broadly about each community? Because there are wonderful assets present in each of our communities. And when we take a step back and look at the ways in which we might serve each person, I believe that we could convene a different question and come up with a different solution. Thanks.
All right, the next question will come to Irene Fernando first. And it is, what ideas do you have for how we can deal with the issue of affordable housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is, of course, a really broad topic, because affordable housing has many different definitions. So first, it's really difficult to have a conversation about affordability without also speaking about income. And income has wide disparities across Hennepin County, and even here in District 2, stretching from Plymouth through Golden Valley, Medicine Lake, the north side, northeast to St. Anthony Village. There are disparities right here in District 2 that we can be focusing on. So first and foremost, how are we speaking about income very directly? Secondly, how are we engaging in building units that are mixed use, mixed income, and a part of economic development corridors? How can we be working along transit corridors and county roads and places in which we are already building transit? So again, the first portion is really about speaking about income and affordability. The second is, when we are building, how are we thinking broadly about the issues? And lastly, when we're building, what are we putting in place with the contracts? We can ensure that we are having our contracts be built by union organizations. We can make sure that there are certain percentages put in place so that we have many different people and different backgrounds and different income levels enjoying spaces with one another. And so I do think it is a multifaceted community approach that has both long-term and short-term benefits in mind. Thank you.
Natalie Johnson-Lee.
As I was door knocking, and affordable housing came up several different times, or multiple times. And one of the residents said, it's not an affordable housing issue, going back to even what Irene said. She said it's an employment issue, an income issue. There are areas in our community or in our district that the median income is at a certain level. And so in those areas, when we look at affordable housing, what does that mean? Is it affordable housing affordable housing here may be a single family home under $160,000. That would not necessarily be affordable housing in Minneapolis. It would not necessarily be affordable housing in Northeast. So as you look at affordable housing, it is a multi-level issue. And one of the things that I think that the way that you need to begin to address it is beginning to make sure that people have jobs, they have viable incomes, and they're able to rent or buy in the neighborhoods in which they choose to live in. And I think that's one of the places that we start with that first.
Blong Yang.
Could I get that question again, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
What ideas do you have for how we can deal with the issue of affordable housing?
Thank you. First, let me start by just saying that everyone deserves a place to live. And when we talk about affordable housing, affordable housing is not just low-income housing. Low-income housing is a part of it, but we're talking about housing from various levels of income. And, we base that on area median income. As a county, the county has HRA authority in municipalities that don't have HRAs, but when cities do have HRAs, the county works with those cities and provides funds for those cities. And I think it's really important that the cities in Hennepin County are encouraged to build more affordable housing for their residents and for folks who want to work and who want to live in those communities. Because sometimes, we talk about cops and nurses and other folks who are professionals who can't afford to live, in housing. And so we have to think about building housing that meets everyone's needs from all different stages. And, I think one of the things that the county is working on that is very promising is that the county has created a fund or created a program to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing in areas of the county where there are existing apartments that are below market. And they're incentivizing these landlords to basically hold on to those properties and keep these properties affordable. And so the county has many different tools at its disposal. But I think the most important thing is to work with the number of different cities, the 45 cities in Hennepin County, to really think about and build affordable housing.
Ia Waldesamayat.
I believe the county resident deserve affordable housing. I would focus on the proactive planning, ensure availability of the quality housing in the county. Too often, lack of affordable housing is another indicator of racial disparities. In our state, we have bank, for example, Client Bank is a Minnesota-based bank, and deny loans for a house or anything else based on zip code in the area and the minorities area. I think the county need to have a regulation ensuring banks and financial institutions do not deny loans for minority communities. And another issue is to work with other departments for the federal housing department, the states, and the county work together. And I think we can fight slumlord. A lot of slumlord in the Minneapolis area or in the suburbs, they just they don't even live the area. They live in different of the cities, but they rent really horrible housing. So I think what we do is regulate those landlords and make them accountable, and hold them accountable and fine them and issue largest fine. Right now, the fine is very small, so it doesn't affect them. So larger fine will help.
Tim Bildso.
Thank you. First off, I support what the city of Minneapolis is doing around affordable housing. The new mayor, Jacob Fry, and the council has really made it a priority, and I think they've got a good plan. And one of the things they're doing is looking at increasing the city's participation funding in affordable housing, which I think is a good step. So I do support what Minneapolis is doing. I also believe that there's a supply problem, that we need more supply of housing. And working with developers and as partners, the cities need to work with developers as partners and find ways to fund affordable housing projects. It's a supply problem, and there needs to be more market rate. There just needs to be more supply in the marketplace, and that's happening in Minneapolis and in the suburbs. There's a tremendous amount of multifamily development going on, so I think that's a step in the right direction. In the front page of the business section of today's paper, there's an article about the North Loop, and I'm quoted in that as president of the North Loop Neighborhood Association. I didn't know if I would have an opportunity to talk about that today, but I will. And the other thing that really is important is for neighborhoods to support affordable housing, and that's what we're doing in the North Loop. There's a project that Duffy is working on. It's going to be a great addition to the North Loop. We're excited about that. It's support, too, for the projects. Thank you.
All right, candidate Bildso, this question will come to you first. Hennepin County has adopted goals for solid waste, especially concerning recycling and organics collection. Do you think these goals are too aggressive, not aggressive enough, or just right, and why?
The Hennepin County takes an active role. I mean, that's one of the goals of Hennepin County. One of their mandates, one of the activities there that they do is solid waste, is recycling, and I support whatever the county does. They're a leader in that, and I support as much as they can do to increase the amount of recycling as possible. I'm not familiar with what their exact goals are for the around recycling, but I support that as a core value of Hennepin County.
Ia Waldessamea.
I would agree with the team. I would support the solid waste program for the Hennepin County initiative. I think there's no such thing too aggressive. I think the county going the right direction, just like a renewable energy, and recycling is come to with just with sufficient energy. Recycling stuff and reusing it again will not just for good for the county, for the entire state, for us.
Irene Fernando.
Yeah, so the purpose of these goals is intended for sustainability. And from my perspective, I do not think that they are aggressive enough. I think there's a lot of improvement that we can engage in when it comes to solid waste, organics, and recycling. These individualized activities alone will not get us where we need to be from a community standpoint, and definitely not from a state or national standpoint. So I do believe that there should be more aggressive goals from the individual standpoint, which will require more aggressive goals from industry, from commercial, and this includes, of course, the operating of the HERC. How can we convene questions around here, these topics that put the community right in the center of this? When we look at the county, it's an 8,000 person workforce that, from my perspective, has relatively little investigative journalism that is engaging with it. You know, imagine a Medtronic or a Best Buy, if they did some big initiative, we would hear about it. We'd hear about it in the news. This place would be full of reporters. And the county is an employer. It is a very sizable one. And their goals directly impact our outcomes and our quality of life. And so I believe it can get more aggressive. I believe it needs to be more multifaceted, and it needs to be lifted from just individual behavior to, again, business, commercial, and industry behavior as well. Thanks.
Natalie Johnson-Lee.
So I think the goals, I don't know them specifically, but I know I'm participating right now in some of the goals in my own home. And one of the things that I think is very important, depending on where you live, is the level of education that is put into the importance of recycling, and also with solid waste, and how do you create sustainability within your various communities. In any of these issues that we talk about, education is key in all of them. The other thing is, I think that it's important for the county to continue to work effectively with the cities to make sure that they're all in alignment with the same goals, so that they can reach the outcomes that they're participating in. I also want to go back to, since I do have a little bit more time, I also want to go back to kind of the affordable housing question. And I want to talk about, really, it's very important that the county continues to work with the cities, neighborhood associations, local nonprofits throughout the district to make sure that as they are looking at what quality of life looks like for each in each individual cities, that they are in line with the city's goals, as well as partnering with the cities to make sure those things happen effectively in those various areas.
Guang Yang.
Thank you. We can talk about these solid waste, organics, and recycling goals, and the county is very aggressive in that. I think that's great. I think it's aspirational, but the reality is that any of these aspirational goals are going to cost people money. 1.2 million people in Hennepin County will have to figure out how to pay extra money for that. From Minneapolis, Minneapolis residents get charged, an extra couple of dollars for our organics recycling, and the level of use there hasn't been all that great, I think. And so I think to the earlier points, we can have these aspirational, aggressive goals, but we have to spend money on educating people to use it. We have to spend money on educating people to understand what needs to happen. And a lot of times, even just in my house, it's a habit that you have to learn, and you learn that over time. And, sometimes it's a couple of years before you learn how to do that sort of thing. And, I'll tell you, the greatest thing that happened in my household was single sort recycling. I think that saved my marriage. And I'm telling you, it's a wonderful thing. And if we could do it across the county, that would be wonderful. But, also with regards to organics recycling, we need to be thinking about doing that, because it certainly helps us to put less things in our landfills. So I think it's really important for us to be thinking about the impact to people, because I think, we can have all these goals, but if we don't really think about the people that it impacts, it will hurt in the long run.
All right, and candidate Yang, this next question will come to you first. With Minneapolis such a large presence in Hennepin County, do you feel that there can be more or better communication and cooperation between departments and communities? Please provide examples and ideas.
I think when you think about Minneapolis, Minneapolis is a very important city in Hennepin County. Minneapolis is but one of 45 cities in Hennepin County. So, I think in terms of numbers, it makes up about a third of the entire county, and so it's really critical that we give Minneapolis its due, but we also have to think about the 44 other communities in Hennepin County. And so I think, that's the part that, we have to balance. And, even in District 2 alone, we have, I say about 5 different cities that we have to, balance as a county commissioner. And, balancing all of that stuff is really important, just because, we have suburban and we have urban, and we have folks from all different incomes, and, we have to think about all those different things. But, in terms of working across departments, I can tell you one of the things that I worked with, as a city council member with the county was the issue of housing. In North Minneapolis, we had a lot of vacant and boarded houses, and we worked with the county to figure out, how we approach it, because, for every boarded and vacant house that the city had, the county had about half of that. So the city, at some point had about 300 boarded and vacant homes, and the county had 150. In terms of vacant lots, it's pretty much the same number or ratio. And so it's really important that we do work with the county to find a solution that, really works in Minneapolis, but also works across the county. And sometimes those are different solutions, but we have to keep on trying to make it work.
Irene Fernando.
Yeah, so there's definitely better communication possible, particularly in today's society where we have many different types of options. This question really highlights an opportunity for intergovernmental partnership. So, for example, there are many county roads here in Golden Valley, and when these county roads have to be ripped up for a variety of reasons, how are we coordinating with other services to ensure that we're doing this all kind of at the same time, which I know is a present day situation here in Golden Valley with some of the construction. And so, for example, with flooding infrastructure, which is one way in which environmental stewardship is expressed in Golden Valley, how are we working with the county and with Minneapolis for when we do construction on a major corridor that we can do that at once? Another example for this is 911 dispatch. So cities use Hennepin County's 911 dispatch as a way to keep our community safe. Additionally, the county has a program called COPE, which is essentially kind of a 911 emergency response for mental health professionals. Couldn't we convene the question of what it would look like for us to combine those services for the betterment of all of our cities and municipalities, so that maybe we can call one number and have a different type of response when they come into our communities. And then, of course, last but not least, transit and jobs is a very important way in which all cities must be working together to ensure a thriving region for us in the future. Thank you.
Natalie Johnson-Lee.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Can. With Minneapolis such a large presence in Hennepin County, do you feel that there can be more or better communication and cooperation between the departments and communities? Please provide examples and ideas.
So there's always room for better communication, and especially at the county level. And as been stated before, Minneapolis is a very large part of the county. And as we look at, even when you look at Minneapolis, Minneapolis is not only a large part of the county, but it's also very diverse in different areas of the city. And so as you're looking at these opportunities, I think is very, and I keep going back because I think a lot of the work that the county does is very important at the city level. And I'll give you an example. So when I'm looking at the different cities, they talk consistently about what their city does, their city government, and those type of things, but they talk very little about what the county, how the county is impacting them. So I think it's very important that as the county decides on what it's going to do or makes decisions, that the cities are in alignment with it, and then those are communicated across the district as to what's happening, but also across the county, so that we know what's happening with the different cities and how it's connected. So one way to do that is when you look at, again, going back to transportation, as we have some of our mass transit coming through, to make sure that we all know what's happening at what given time. So as far as the construction, as well as far as when those things are going to be up and running and how available they will be out to our constituency.
Tim Bildso.
Thank you. Great question. I'm going to take a little exception to the question, and I'm just going to add this, that I think every city in Hennepin County is important, not just Minneapolis. Yes, Minneapolis is the largest, and it is the the elephant in the room, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that Golden Valley, where we're sitting today, or Eden Prairie isn't as important. When I was a council member in Plymouth, one of the things we did was we had quarterly, if we could, scheduling-wise, meetings with the county. And we'd sit down and talk about activities we're doing. What are the priorities that we're working on right now? What were the priorities for the year that we're moving along on? And share those ideas and work together. Because it is a partnership. Hennepin County is a partnership with the cities. There's actually two different constituencies. The residents that we all share, right? Golden Valley's got residents here that Hennepin County, as an elected commissioner, would be mine too. So we need to collaborate. We need to work together. And I will tell you that there's room to work in better communication between the cities and Hennepin County. There is room to work, and that needs to be a priority. It's one of my priorities. I've been on both sides of it. I've seen both of them. And there needs to be better collaboration. Everyone benefits from that. Thank you.
And Iya Walda-Samayat.
I think that like Minneapolis is have more voice advances of whatever they want compared to the suburban. This is what I want the county to change from 7 commissioners to 9, because right now some of the areas, some of the cities' voice is not heard properly. One of the things is, for example, I can give you Milwaukee County, the largest county in Wisconsin. They have 18 representatives in the county, which is they have less population than the Hennepin County. They have about 950,000 people. We have 1.23 million people in this area, but we have 7 commissioners. We need to have more voice, more commissioners in the area. That way, all the communication will be addressed. Back to the Milwaukee County, the one representative represent about 53,000 people. And here is a lot more than over 100,000 people. So the commissioners, they have so much other work to do, so they really don't interact with the community or the concerned voice. They always focus on the job. What is next to be done? So what we need to do is increase the commissioner from 7 to 9.
Thank you. And this next question will come to you first, candidate Walda-Samayat. How will you advocate for Hennepin County at the federal level for funds for health care, transportation, and housing?
Okay. I will advocate. I currently work for the VA and the St. Paul Regional Office. We work about 23 states. So that's a large part of the country west of the Mississippi. And the best way to advocate from the federal and the state government is streamline the system. Streamline the system and direct communicate with the elected officials and ask directly what we need to for the budget. For example, for the transportation, the transit system expanded to the west. That transit system about the majority of fund is going to come from the Federal Transportation Agency. And other cities competing for that money too, like in California and North Carolina, Seattle, one of them. They all want that money. So what we need is a strong commissioner to advocate for that money to come directly to here. And when we granted that money, the county need to accept it right away and add more funding from the county and work it right away. Otherwise, that fund will be gone to other cities, to other states.
Natalie Johnson-Lee.
Repeat the question one more time to make sure I get it right.
How will you advocate for Hennepin County at the federal level for funds for health care, transportation, and housing?
One of the things that's exciting about the Hennepin County Commissioner seat because it's nonpartisan, and so I think one of the things that you can do is. For me, it's about putting people over politics. And so, one, it's about building relationships with your elected officials, but also the county and the city, they have legislative arms with them that they go out and they actually advocate for the policies that we're looking for at the state and the federal level. The challenge is to make sure that they not only have your voice and what you need and what you want to see done and the things and the priorities, but also that we as commissioners speak to those same issues wherever we go and whomever we talk to, and especially specifically about building relationships with those other elected officials and making sure that they have our best interests at heart.
Irene Fernando.
Yes, so a big part of this will be a partnership approach, of course, federal, state, cities, and all the way to neighborhoods. What are the ways in which we are ensuring that we are listening across all layers of government so that we can discover what our shared values and our shared outcomes may be? That directly relates to a spirit of unity. There are 87 counties in Minnesota, and when one county succeeds, we can find ways in which other counties can succeed. And so, again, what are our shared interests as a state, even, as we consider how we might be advocating for ourselves on the federal level? And most importantly from all of these is how can we express the investment of resources today being having a direct relationship with the outcomes of our future. So that's not only human outcomes and environmental outcomes, that's also economic outcomes. There are a lot of dollars already being spent on the 4 lines of business of the county and for our residents. Are there more creative, imaginative, more people-centered, more exciting ways in which we might invest those funds today so that 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, we can ensure that we have a vibrant workforce and that we are offering services and housing and creating a community that we are proud to have for those future generations? Thank you.
Tim Bildso.
Thank you. How many people have driven on 494 in Plymouth? I think most of us have, right? Okay. So a number of years ago, it was probably 14 years ago, we realized there's a problem in Plymouth. 2 lanes versus 3 lanes. Plymouth was the only part of the 494 loop that had 2 lanes. And what happened? Nothing happened because traffic backed up in Plymouth. And it was a problem for residents, businesses, and it's also a national transit route for commerce around the country. So myself and a few council members took a couple of trips to talk with our representatives in Washington, and we asked for money. We presented the facts, and we started there. And after a couple of attempts at that, we realized that wasn't going to prove to be beneficial to us, and we went to the state. And through negotiation, understanding the partnership with the city, understanding the importance of investing in 494 and the positive outcomes that would come from putting a 3rd lane on 494, Charlie Zelli came up with the money. It was about $100 million, and we built the 3rd lane on 494. So it's a partnership, understanding what the issues are, and working in collaboration with our partners, meaning the cities, which I just talked about a minute ago, the state, and the federal government. Thank you.
And Blang Yang.
So the question was, how would you advocate on the federal and state level with regards to healthcare, transportation, and housing? And I will just say, carefully and fiercely. And let me just say that, when you think about the revenue for the federal funds and state funds, it makes up about 20% of Hennepin County's annual budget. $200 million from the feds and $250 million from the states, according to the budget. And so when you have that, what you're really looking at is the county has an IGR department that the county follows that advises the county on how to proceed. And so I think, one is to listen carefully to them, but two is, to Tim's point earlier, talk to legislators. Talk to legislators, at the state level and at the federal level, and at some points go and testify. Be a part of the process, and county commissioners do that on a consistent basis. But, I also want to say, I think the important thing is, when you're asking for funds, put up great projects, put amazing projects up there, and also do great work as a county so that it's justified in terms of the money that comes. And I think a lot of times, we talk about healthcare or housing, and to that extent, when the county does some of those services, the county is administering a service, and so for the county to do it very well, it justifies that money coming to the county.
All right. This next question will go to Natalie Johnson-Lee first. Hennepin County has many residents of lower income with special needs in health, education, child care, and housing. How can the county integrate planning and services in these areas for lower income residents?
So one of the things that I didn't talk about earlier is I've run a program for the last 13 years called Girls in Action. And many of the girls that I work with would basically meet that criteria. So I have worked with them and their families and escorted them through that particular process. And give me the second part of the question.
How can the county integrate their planning and services in those areas of health, education, child care, and housing?
Well, the county does do that now. Can they do it better? Yes, and that's where within the county system, those entities are talking to each other and communicating to each other around the individuals that they are servicing. So I'll give you an example. If you have a young girl who is, or a young person who is, or a family that's in, they have a child that's truant. Well, they are more than likely, if they're in the system, then the county or the social worker or the county knows. And so there's a way that they can also talk to the school so everybody knows what services are happening, what services that young person needs. I've worked with the county and the city and the school board to make sure that these young people are successful. And so through this program and through this process, we have a 95% graduation rate with the young girls that we have navigated through these systems and made sure that they have successful graduation rates and they go on to college.
Tim Bildso.
As was mentioned, this is a big function of what the county does right now. Can they do a better job? Absolutely. It comes down to funding as well, and more resources need to be put to this issue. The other thing is there are nonprofit organizations in our community that get this, that are good at it, and I think part of it is listening to those nonprofits and understanding how they're dealing with the issues, how they're solving, and really work with nonprofits in the community. First of all, for suggestions and also for partnerships to deliver better services. Thank you.
Blong Yang.
Could you repeat that question?
I can. Hennepin County has many residents of lower income with special needs in health, education, child care, and housing. How can the county integrate planning and services in these areas for those lower income residents?
Thank you. So I think the county is working really hard at meeting these needs. And, when we look at examples that the county has put forth, I think, two examples that come to mind that are really important, in my view. When we, as a county, decided to move to the hub system where we were putting hubs closer to the people and putting them in different communities that were closer to the people and the needs, that made it, I think, a lot better for people just to get to there instead of just going all the way downtown. I think the second example that I want to point out is North Point's Health and Wellness Center. North Point's Health and Wellness Center has been a critical institution for North Minneapolis for, I want to say, the past 50 to 60 years. And we are just now recognizing that we need to expand it. And the county is spending in the ballpark, I want to say about $65 million to expand it because of the need. And so, I think to some extent, I felt like the county took maybe a little bit longer to get to that point, but certainly, it got there. And I think, we need to be looking at all these different programs that are out there that, the county needs to look at and help fund if they are doing the service that the county should be doing. And so, these are just but two examples that we can do to really figure out how to bridge that gap and provide the services that our different communities need, including, but specifically, the low-income communities and also special needs communities.
Ia Waldesmayat.
Can you repeat that question, please?
Hennepin County has many residents of lower income with special needs in health, education, childcare, and housing. How can the county integrate planning and services in these areas for lower income residents?
I think the county need to provide continue provide the service, but work more with a nonprofit organization. Also provide a job. I continue to see a lot of employer hiring people with disabilities, which is very encouraging. A lot of easy task jobs and a lot of retailer and health fitness centers they're hiring. I think the county need to provide a service. Send like a social worker or counselor provided. Long time ago I worked in a job where a social worker sent from the county that just come and just provided easy life skills like how to interact with the customers and how to write, how to fill out the job application. Those are a huge help for lower income families. Just because they don't have a lot of times just teaching for the kids because they have to work and they have to provide for the family. So I would encourage the county to work and keep working with nonprofit organization as well as with the county.
Irene Fernando.
For as many lists that Minnesota makes it on where we are the best of, we have horrific disparities. And when these disparities are seen and known, particularly disproportionately for communities of color and low-wage communities, they need to be met with disproportionate resources and solutions and convening. And so when we look at District 2, which has some of the most significant disparities in Hennepin County, for me, this is where the county has an incredible role. Every politician has an opportunity to influence and to legislate. This seat has an opportunity to lead as an employer. We have 8,000 people who've already given their years and decades for a lot of services that directly intersect with these populations. So, for example, child welfare and protection services. We actually don't have to have a lot of votes legislatively in order to make a difference in the lives of young people every single day that are being removed from unsafe situations or families that are, for whatever circumstantial reason, not able to stay together. So I think there's a wonderful power that we can convene there, which I'm really excited to consider. Said more directly, we need to design our systems with the person at the center, and we need to follow the data. Another direct example of this is evictions. 50% of evictions in Hennepin County are in 2 zip codes, both in District 2. We must have a different way in which we can approach these questions for the betterment of our communities, of all of our neighbors, and all of our family members. Thank you.
This next question comes to you first, Candidate Fernando. How would you monitor and address Southwest Light Rail Transit cost increases and environmental concerns? How will Hennepin County fund their share of light rail transit?
So really simple question. Thank you for that. That was kind of a joke. So as we all know, Southwest Light Rail has been in discussion since the 80s, literally. And when we think about the last several decades around how are we ensuring that we are advancing ourselves as regional mass transit leaders, because that is a responsibility for the largest county, and also doing so in a responsible way among the cities that are being served, as well as the ways in which Hennepin County is funding that. So how will I monitor it? I will be attending a lot of meetings, to say that very directly. When it comes to the environmental concerns, we have to consider this relative to what we would be spending or expending otherwise. We as a community need to decrease our carbon footprint in order for us to be sustainable long term. So that does not mean only light rail. That means bus rapid transit. That means bus rapid transit now. That means how are we motivating people to take on the behavior that is needed for light rail and bus rapid transit? A lot of the costs associated with these look really difficult when the ridership is at its current amount. But if we increase ridership, if we increase how we're paying attention to density, if we hold the commissioners accountable to making decisions that are meant to shape our communities for decades, I believe that we will be able to come up with an answer that meets today's needs as well as our future needs. Thank you.
Guang Yang.
I'm going to apologize and ask you to repeat that question. It's a little bit complicated, I think.
Yeah, no apology needed. How would you monitor and address Southwest Light Rail Transit cost increases and environmental concerns? And how will Hennepin County fund their share of light rail transit?
Okay, thank you. In terms of monitoring the costs and the cost overruns, I think, at some point, the county does need to look at what point do we just say we can't go on with this? And, I don't think we're there yet, but, I do want to say, I think for every project, there has to be some point where we just say no. That being said, though, I think that when you look at this project, there's been division at the state and federal levels, and so funding streams that were formerly available just aren't here anymore. And, I think for the next county commissioner for District 2 and for other county commissioners, their job is to really work really hard to find that transportation funding so that Hennepin County is not the only one that's paying for it or its taxpayers, whether it's property taxes or other things. But I think that's the thing. Like, we have to really be thinking about, where the money comes from. And, at this point, what we should recognize is that the county is going to take a bigger role than, it ever has for a project. And, is that okay for our, taxpayers to raise their taxes to pay for this? And so I think those are really tough questions that we have to answer before we move on to, other lines, but also just before we move on to just, these cost overruns that are going to cost this line a lot more than what we had anticipated in the past. Thank you.
Natalie Johnson-Lee.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to repeat it one more time because there's a lot in that one question.
Here, there is. How would you monitor and address Southwest Light Rail Transit cost increases and environmental concerns? And how will Hennepin County fund their share of light rail transit?
Well, I think one of the responsibilities is for us to monitor good governance, is to monitor the expenditures and what's happening. And if they're increasing at a rate that is unmanageable for us, then we need to reconsider what we're looking at and how we're looking at and our role in it, as well as looking at other opportunities and other partnerships in order to be able to make sure that the transit lines goes forward, but at the same time not off the back of our constituency, and to make sure that we spread the wealth or the bill.
Tim Bildso.
Thank you. Great question. I think we're committed to it. At this point, there's been a tremendous amount of money spent. We need to bring it to fruition. I don't think there's any person up here that would disagree that there's an economic benefit to along the line. We're already starting to see that. It's going to happen, but we're committed to it at this point. Earlier this year, to your question directly about cost and environmental impacts, I served on a task force that was put together that discussed the wall between the freight and the commuter. It's a big issue. And we sat, met, and talked about how we're going to design this wall. And one of the things we came up with was a way to do it a lot cheaper by millions and millions of dollars than what was being proposed, one. And second, to deal with some of the environmental issues. And I'm not going to get real specific, but I'll just say that animals crossed from one side of that wall to the other, and we designed a way for animals to cross and keep the environment, keep the animals safe. So I've already been a part of the discussion of how do we save money and how do we protect the environment. And it really comes down to being engaged, which every council or every commissioner should be on this project. Thank you.
Ia Woldesmayat.
Thank you. I think the cost is already committed. I think we need to expedite it and move on to implement the transit system because it's already, the county commissioner already voted for 5-2 and is moving the direct direction. And I 100% support the transit. The environmental cost, I think the environmental cost is going to be a lot minimal compared to everybody driving cars. And I happen to work right by the St. Paul light rail, and a lot of times I jump in that light rail, go to downtown Minneapolis, and go to the St. Paul, and it's very, very convenient. It's very easy, and go to the Mall of America. So a lot of people could want to go downtown or move, go to a different city like on St. Paul River. And instead of everybody driving, they can take the light rail, and I think that is very beneficial for our environment in the future. And how do we fund it? I think the cost is going to keep going up as long as the county commissioner is not doing anything about it. And inflation going to go up, and the cost of funding, competing with other cities, going to keep going up. A lot of cities want the grant money, not just the Hennepin County. So I would say we should go forward and support the transit, no matter what.
We have time for one more question, and then we'll have our closing statements. And this question will go to Tim Bildso first. Overseeing the budget is a major responsibility of a commissioner. How would you balance county residents' need for services with tax burden on residents?
Boy, that's a really good question. I'll just say that I've done it before. I did it for 16 years in the city of Plymouth, where we had to balance what we needed to do and what we wanted to do. And I think it is, with a budget, in this case, of multi-billion dollars, it's more of a challenge. So what I would do, and what I did in my time of serving in Plymouth was listen to all the facts from the various departments, what their priorities are, and then balance them to what the priorities are of the county. But also understanding what the needs are of the people who live in the county. And if you look at Hennepin County's budget, there's about a little over $1 billion spent every year in capital improvements. And the operating budget is significant. It's significantly higher than that. So, it's a priority. It's really looking at, what Hennepin County's goals are and balancing those to what the needs are of the community. And also, I think, let me just back up a second. One of the things that's also very important is to understand the money that pays for everything comes from taxpayers. So there's a need to be disciplined in how that money is being spent. And so it's a very difficult question to answer. In Plymouth, we did I think an outstanding job of balancing those things and not increasing taxes inordinately. Thank you.
Ia Woldesmayat.
For the budget need to streamline. For the currently the place I work, we at St. Paul Regional Office have a jurisdiction of $3.3 billion. We pay out. We just have a little over 350,000 employees, so they can be done and be accountable. I will focus on innovation of solution toward streamline the county services, so the community have access services at one point. A resident tax dollar being used fairly, effectively, sufficiently, because that's what people pay taxes, and they want to know how their tax be used, and we have responsibility to use their tax efficiently.
Natalie Johnson-Lee.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Overseeing the budget is a major responsibility of a commissioner. How would you balance county residents' need for services with the tax burden on residents?
So one of the things that's important as you balance the budget, when I was at City Hall, one of the things that I noticed there was an extreme amount of waste, and so in how we did policy, and so it was beginning to tighten up the budget. And looking at ways where we can streamline, ways where we can, what most people say, cut out the fat, but not cut out the services to constituencies. People want good services for their tax dollars. One of the things that here in Golden Valley, you rate your services very, very high. And so you want to make sure that those are maintained, but you also want to make sure that your property taxes don't go up. And so I'm not in favor of excessive property taxes. I'm a property taxpayer, and I don't get excited about paying additional taxes, especially if the services don't match what I'm paying for. So I think that we have to look at, we have to be prudent with every dollar that comes in and make sure that for every dollar that goes out, we are spending it consciously and effectively while also maintaining the highest level of services, because at the end of the day, everyone in every community deserves an excellent quality of life, and they deserve excellent services from their county.
Long Yang.
Thank you. So when you look at the revenue from Hennepin County, about almost $800 million from Hennepin County comes from property taxes. That's about a third of the annual budget of $2.4 billion every year. And, we will have to balance the need for services and the tax burden. And, in this sort of way, though, I think when people talk about tax burdens, I think, it's always, it's going to affect middle class folks or upper class folks. But, tax burdens affect everybody. And that's the reality that we have to face. And so when you're spending on needs, you have to really think about what are the needs. And you spend on needs, not on wants. And, I think the reality, though, that we haven't talked about tonight is that sometimes what we're seeing is that the state is mandating the county to do certain things that are unfunded mandates. And I think one part of it is the child protection system that we need to look at. And so when those things happen, unfunded mandates, well, guess what? Sometimes, what we're seeing is unfunded mandates being funded through taxpayer dollars or through property taxes. And so, it's those sorts of things that, we have to recognize. And I think to the extent in which, we're not raising taxes, then we have to think about other things such as getting funding from the states, from the federal government, from fees, from bond proceeds, from other sources. And those are kind of the things that, a county commissioner should be doing, is looking at other ways of creating revenue so that we can fund those needs that we have.
Irene Fernando.
Budgets and financials tell a story. They tell a story of our priorities, of our values, how we spend funds will communicate to the community what we are seeing as more important than other initiatives. And so from my perspective, there are specific ways in which we might just literally look at the money differently. So for example, if I had a bail that I could not pay, I might go to jail because I couldn't pay that bail. Maybe it's $100, maybe it's $200, but it's $140 a night for me to stay in jail. And if I'm suffering from a mental illness, it might be $1,300 a night. And so when we think of putting me as a resident at the center, how might we spend those funds differently is an important way in which we can ensure that we are both meeting the needs of of residents, while also alleviating tax burden. What that illuminates is a broader financial model. What are we motivating and how are we motivating it? If I'm someone who's suffering from an eviction, adding another fine on top of me is not going to allow me to contribute to the tax base. It's not going to allow me to get off of county services. And so I do believe that there are fundamental redesigns that need to take place because our systems are functioning in a specific way that isn't necessarily working for 2018 residents. And it's definitely not working for 2020 and 2030 residents. And so I'm interested in that really hard work, and I'm interested in hearing all of your perspectives to make sure we get there. Thank you.
All right, now each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we'll begin with Long Yang.
1 minute, right?
1 minute.
Wow, that's quick. Okay. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to all of you, those here and those watching on TV. And I'm going to make a quote, but this is not directed at anybody. I just found this moving. In a congressional hearing, FBI agent Peter Strzok described the current political climate in this way. We are living in a political era in which insults and insinuation often drown out honesty and integrity. I think he intended his statement to apply to all sides. I'd like to see us get back to honesty and integrity. At a minimum, I will give you that. To solve our biggest, most pressing problems, we will need more honesty and integrity. The job of a county commissioner is important. There are 2.4 billion reasons why. This job is a big responsibility. I have the professional and personal experience to do this job well. I will give you my best to represent all residents of District 2 because you deserve it. I will listen to your input. I will talk to city leaders across the district. I will talk to staff. I will talk to experts. I will base my decisions based on factual information, always keeping in mind the impact that it will have on you, and I will communicate my reasons for my decisions. I ask for your vote on August 14th. Thank you.
Irene Fernando.
People deserve to see themselves in the story of county, of politics, of leadership, and that's why I'm running. I'm here to bring new energy, expertise, and insight to the County Commission, and so I'm here very humbly and urgently asking for your support. I care very deeply about the communities. I really want this job, and it happens to include an 18-month interview process, and so thanks for being on the panel. From my perspective, I hope that my values, my energy, and my work speaks for itself. So please visit my website, voteirene.com, and see for yourself who else is supporting me, why they're supporting me. Look at the issues that I care about and the ways in which I've led in our communities already. Far more importantly than any of this, despite a very divisive political and social climate, I very much believe in what's possible for our communities, and I'm very, very excited to get started to lead for a more vibrant future. Thank you.
Iya Waldesomea.
Thank you for coming tonight. I am very happy to see a very diverse candidate tonight, represented with the county we live in. On personal note, I want to give a special thanks for the League of Women of Golden Valley. When I first became a U.S. citizen, the League of Women Voters of Minnesota was the first group to reach out to me and gave me to register and vote. I registered right away, and I've been forever grateful for that. They are doing an incredible job advancing our public engagement and democracy. I thank you for that. I have been truly honored to be here tonight. I look forward to representing the Hennepin County District 2. And if you look more information, you can find my website, egoboldesamaet.com. Thank you so much, guys.
Natalie Johnson Lee.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm excited to be here. I'm also excited to be your next county commissioner. I'm a bridge builder. I bring 40-plus years of service to the community and to and specifically 25-plus to Hennepin County. I have a unique ability to translate public policy to everyday people, and also to everyday people bring that same conversation back to policymakers and into the chambers of the county. I love what I do. I actually do the work of a county commissioner right now. I just don't hold the position. I'm in the community day in and day out, servicing individuals. So with that, I would love your support. I thank you for your questions. They were insightful and they provoked thought. And I appreciate every one of you that took the time out and stayed, and those that are watching. And I'd like to be your next county commissioner. Thank you.
Tim Bildso.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. I really want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. Again, thanking the City of Golden Valley for letting us use their great facility. And I also want to thank the folks here today and those watching on TV for questions and also just for paying attention. I also want to just thank Long Ying for what he said about working together in good politics. And because that's important. We've lost that in government. We've lost it on the local level even, which really says a lot about the state of affairs today. It's beautiful going to a council meeting and arguing over issues and coming up with the right decisions. That works very well for everybody, and that's what I want to do as a Hennepin County Commissioner. The district needs a person who's engaged with the district, with practical experience and dedication, and I ask for your vote on August 14th. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates, the audience here and at home, and CCX Media Northwest Community Television for recording this forum. Now we will hear from Golden Valley Voter Service Chair Jackie Wells with closing statements and the replay dates.
Thank you, Laura. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Golden Valley, I heartily thank the candidates for Hennepin County Sheriff and Hennepin County Commissioner District 2 for answering all of our audience questions tonight. We hope the forum has helped the audience here and at home to make an informed decision in the primary election. A special thank you to Laura Hilmer of League of Women Voters of Eastern Carver County for moderating the two forums so professionally. Thank you to CCX Media for recording our forum, to League of Women Voters Crystal New Hope East Plymouth and League of Women Voters Minnetonka Eden Prairie Hopkins for helping us out. And thanks so much to the City of Golden Valley for letting us use the fabulous council chambers. Replay dates for this forum on Channel 12 are August 4th at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., August 5th at 10 p.m., and August 8th at 7 p.m., and it will be on the website ccxmedia.org. If you want to know more about League of Women Voters, talk to one of us. We would be delighted to share that with you. My guess is the candidates would be willing to chat with you for a few minutes after our forum. As a reminder, early voting is open at Golden Valley City Hall and probably everybody else's City Hall also. And every day during business hours and also on that Saturday before the election. You may vote on Saturday, August 11th also. And if you want an absentee ballot sent to you, just go to mnvotes.org, which is the Secretary of State website. And remember, the primary election is on August 14th. Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking our candidates and our moderators.